Hey everyone, how's it going? So, this is a topic that I've wanted to touch on for some time now, but to be honest, it's such a divisive topic that I was hesitant to devote the time to something that I wasn't 100% sure how to approach. But nonetheless, I realize that it's best to just get it out of the way and share my views on the state of modern feminism. Now, not everybody's going to agree with me, and that's absolutely fine. It falls under the realm of discourse, and if you disagree with any of the points I have to make, by all means, share it in the comments section below, or just click the dislike button. Now, before I get started, I really want to stress that feminism, small f, is not a monolith. So if you're the type of person who carte blanche condemns feminism as a whole, then I'm going to have to disagree with you, and I'll touch on this a little bit more nearer to the end of the video, but in the meantime, just listen to this. Big F feminism, on the other hand, it's too closely akin to a religion, and people whose entire identity revolves around their advocacy for feminism really need to take a step back and realize that they're approaching the topic with the zeal of a fanatic. So in that, I agree that many do treat it as though it is as unassailable as a young earth creationist treats the Bible and denies evolution. Critics of modern feminism commonly make the claim that it has become far too ideological, and for what it's worth, I'm forced to agree. It's gotten to the point where claims made cannot even be scrutinized without the scrutineer being accused of misogyny if they're male or a self-hating woman if they're female, despite having evidence that some claims are exaggerated or embellished at best, and outright fabrications at worst. The scrutineer is attacked in much the same fashion as the scientific community is attacked by religious fanatics. What's worse is that many of the claims made don't necessarily have to have any sort of evidence backing it, making it spurious at best. So as long as an opinion is held by a feminist, according to Big F feminism, scrutiny of said opinion is, in fact, misogyny. A good example of spurious claims and opinions being defended by fanatic zeal are the recent shirt storm controversy, in which a scientist, in light of his recent accomplishments, was shamed and blamed because he wore a shirt with scantily clad comic book women on it, and was blamed for being responsible for scaring away women from science and technology fields. Another such example is protests at the University of Toronto in 2012 at a talk given by Warren Farrell, a former member of the National Organization for Women and advocate of second-wave feminism. He is now known as a prominent speaker on the behalf of the modern men's movement. While Farrell has written a number of books and papers offering even-handed criticism to the state of feminism and how they treat men, it was his statements on the politics surrounding rape that prompted this.
Stop Warren Farrell! Stop Warren Farrell!
And these so-called men's rights groups are actually hate groups.
Very frustrated. I was studying all today, and I took time out of my studies to come here.
Would you like to ask him why he's here?
I'm not sufficiently convinced that I'll receive an answer that isn't what I presented.
Two of my friends committed suicide, and I want the peace of understanding why that happened.
You should be fucking ashamed of yourself. You're fucking scum. You are fucking scum. Fucking rape apologist, incest supporting, woman hating, fucking scum.
Is there someone else I can wait to see one follow me?
Fucking scum. Yeah, just another.
I just want to listen to someone else's opinion. I'm not even on a side here. I just listen to as many people as I can.
You know what though? Why would you pay money to fucking support a fucking rape apologist if you weren't fucking one?
I've never heard him say anything that was.
Well, it's fucking scum.
You have a ticket? This is what men's rights look like! This is what men's rights look like! This is what men's rights look like! This is what men's rights look like!
You're a murderer! You're fucking scum! Fuck you! They're fucking pigs! How do you sleep at night, man? You fuckers!
The talk, which was part of a tour around his upcoming book, The Boy Crisis, was about the psychological effects suffered by men that led to suicide. Some attending the talk were blocked from entering the building just because they sought the peace of mind of understanding why their friends and family killed themselves, and were blamed for being rape apologists, just for wanting to hear the man speak. Now, the modern feminist movement has a number of spurious claims that they refuse to examine. Among them, such issues as the wage gap, in which even government figures have repeated the claim that women are paid less than a man for the exact same work. This is kind of a throwback to Hillary Clinton. Now, this is false on its face. In the USA, the Equal Pay Act of 1963 made such things illegal. In Canada, the Canadian Human Rights Act of 1977 made it illegal. In the UK, their Equal Pay Act made it illegal since 1970, and in Australia, it happened in 1969. Any kind of wage gap based on gender has been illegal for at least 40 years in most English-speaking countries around the globe, and yet they're pushing for, more legislation? It doesn't make any sense to me. The studies that show women are paid 77 cents on a man's dollar have been shredded by people much smarter and more resourceful than I, but I even understand why that figure shows up. And it's mostly because the studies fail at logic. While it's true that if we were to average out every man and woman's earnings in the United States, the number does hold firm, it fails to take into consideration the choices of both men and women. Despite strong efforts to recruit more women into STEM fields, which, due to the education required, tends to pay much more, we find that women, by and large, tend to prefer the so-called social sciences, which is in much less demand. It also fails to take into consideration that many women prefer to be stay-at-home mothers and ignores the fact that, on average, women do take more sick days than men. In fact, some recent studies have come out that women in certain professions actually do earn more than men in the very same profession. So where's the outcry there? There really is none, because many still hold to the perception that men out-earn women in every way. Now, I'd also just like to point out that if it is true that men out-earn women in every way, then why is it that women are the biggest consumers and spend the most money? So the biggest concern to me is how steadfastly they will argue against the rights of men, even in areas in which men are at a disadvantage. If you were to point out that men suffer from domestic violence as well and get no government support, and in getting no support often turn to suicide, this is the kind of thing you're met with.
Programs for women and maybe one for men. So go down to the grave sites.
If you attempt to correct them on the statistics that you know to be false, even with proof, this is what you're met with.
Shut the fuck up for the 50th billionth time!
With the recent surge in intersectional feminism, this sort of feminist mindset has surpassed its original intention and gone on to apply the same sort of doctrine to such areas as LGBT rights, racism, ableism, fat acceptance, video games, and conflated the anti-male rhetoric to also apply to white people, straight people, the able-bodied, people with healthy weights, and gamers. But when this is pointed out, we're met with the same responses. You just don't understand feminism. Not all feminists are like that. What's your problem with equality? This common response is called the Mott and Bailey Doctrine, coined by Dr. Nicholas Shackle in his 2005 paper, The Vacuity of Postmodernist Methodology. The Mott and Bailey is the best explanation I've heard for this particular type of argument. Named for a type of medieval castle, the Mott and Bailey is a defensive system in which a stone tower on a mound, known as the motte, is surrounded by an area of land, known as the bailey. In the context of the doctrine, it means that this type of feminist will regularly stand upon the bailey and assert indefensible positions such as citing the wage gap or the misleading statistics of campus rape. Although, when pressed, they tend to retreat to the tower and assert a more defensible position as though it's the same argument and not the actual shifting of a goalpost. I actually urge anyone interested in exploring this topic a little deeper to read Dr. Shackle's paper, as it outlines many of the other doctrines of postmodernist discourse, all which fit surprisingly well within the Big F feminist framework. The link for that is in the low bar. So with all these things in mind, it's no wonder that more and more people are shunning feminism in favor of egalitarianism, men's rights, or humanism. But, and I really want to stress this, while the statement, "that's not what feminism is about," is a no true Scotsman's fallacy, and the people who use that as a defense don't understand that feminism is not a monolith, as in there's no such thing as one true feminism. The statement that not all feminists are like that is, on the other hand, true. Because not all feminists are like that. In fact, some feminists are pretty damn awesome and reject the prevailing ideology in the so-called mainstream of feminism. If we look at feminists like Germaine Greer, Gloria Steinem, Simone de Beauvoir, Jessica Valenti, Amanda Marcotte, and Anita Sarkeesian, we see the type of feminism that many people are coming to despise. The unfortunate part is that this type of feminist seems to be, whether by simply being the most vocal minority or the main power in feminism, the most common kind that you will encounter. This type of feminist is explicitly anti-male, and in many cases are also anti-white, anti-straight, and anti-logic. Their mainstay seems to be that even if 99% of men are discriminated against or disadvantaged, if even one single woman experiences similar levels of discrimination or disadvantage, that's the more important conversation to have. But there are, of course, feminists such as Camille Paglia, Christina Hoff Sommers, and others who recognize the fallacious reasoning behind this. People who recognize that adherence to false statistics and hypocritical treatment of issues that affect everyone is going to do more harm than good to society as a whole. They've worked tirelessly with little support for decades to combat this kind of Marxist, postmodernist feminism. They have stood up to bullies amidst threats, accusations, and censorship of their research. But these feminists have, in recent times, found that their allies are growing. On a recent live stream with fellow YouTuber Sargon of Akkad, journalist Milo Yiannopoulos stated that Dr. Summers has said that she's been waiting decades for a cause like Gamergate, of all people, to arise. A group that would treat the direction of modern feminism with humor, skepticism, and an unwillingness to back down from what they perceive to be the ridiculous excesses of extreme feminism. A group that scoffs at trigger warnings, that cannot be shamed because they know they're not doing anything shameful. And that recognizes that this modern third and fourth wave feminism cannot stand up to the scrutiny it receives in any tangible way, and therefore must, by definition, rely almost entirely on hypocritical and oftentimes false belief defended with religious zeal. And so to me, it's important to lift the type of feminists like Paglia and Summers upon our shoulders and support their effort to reclaim feminism for what it could be. Over the past few months, I've met several self-identified feminists who believe wholeheartedly in their messages. Some attempted to even start a hashtag campaign to bring awareness to this, called Reclaim Feminism. And I think the best course of action is to bring the awareness that's due to the movement forward. Feminism, as it stands, is a powerhouse in the Western world. It can never, nor should it ever, be eliminated, but what we can do is start a cause to bring some much-needed rationalism to the movement and take power away from the zealots and back into the hands of people like Dr. Summers. No matter how feminism started out, whether it was positive or negative for women or society, is debatable. But it's clear that what it's become today, it promotes weakness as a virtue, and it demonizes strength of character. I think that every effort must be made to reclaim it because it's become far too easy for people with specific agendas to utilize and claim any sort of scrutiny of their behavior as misogyny or hate speech. Now, there is merit in feminism that does not rely on a loosely defined patriarchy theory. The idea of a functioning patriarchy is silly and fallacious at best. And this isn't even to mention that, depending on which feminist you ask, patriarchy is defined differently. Some recognize it for what it is, a vague idea with no clear meaning, but in my experience, most simply take it to mean men control everything, especially women. But we know, simply by virtue of what feminism has become, that's simply not true. You cannot offer even the most even-handed scrutiny of modern feminism without being attacked on all sides. Most defenders will say that this type of extremist feminism is nothing more than a straw man. But if it is, it's clear that the voice of this straw man in particular is much louder than the rational voices of feminism. And to me, that's something that's definitely worthy of addressing. But to the fair-minded feminists that may be listening, the ones who value equity over identity, who value men's rights as much as they do the rights of women, I urge you and everyone listening to make every effort to reclaim feminism. I urge you to be loud and be heard. Drown out the voices of the extremists, force them back, and remind yourself that feminism shouldn't be a dirty word, but also remind yourself why it's fast becoming one. So thanks for listening, guys. Drop a like if you agree, a dislike if you disagree, and leave a comment sharing your own views on the matter. And in closing, I'm going to play a few videos outlining exactly the type of feminist I'm talking about. So please, check it out.
Get the fuck off me! Get your hand off my breast now! Get your hand off my breast now! Who did that?
She's a professor, and she steals signs.
Wait, don't you know you're stealing?
She's a thief. It's a professor.
Signs and we'll take it too.
What?
You better guide your other signs and we'll
Didn't
take
you
it
realize
too.
how much she was just making up? Like,
I may be a thief, but you're a terrorist.
It does not look like that. It's a clump of motherfucking cells. No hands are shown through that time. You're just a white fucking privileged racist fucking male that doesn't stand for women's rights. Get the fuck out of here. Fuck dipshit. And get that camera out of my face. Jesus.
I'm reading, fuckface.